Stay tuned to hear the story of the hardest downhill hiking of my life and see a 360-degree video of the area. I left the house at 4 a.m. with my dog Daisy to hike Trampas Peak, elevation 12,170, and the peak called Trampas Santa Barbara Ridge, elevation 12,453 feet. I had a day pack of about 15 pounds, a third of it water. My wire hair fox terrier had a little pack with water and food. We went through the town of Truchas, New Mexico, headed east on Highway 76 until we came to an 8-mile dirt road, Highway 207, in the Carson National Forest. We then went to the Trampas trailhead. We started hiking on a cool, crisp morning, 6:45 a.m., Thursday, July 29, 2010. The elevation was 8,950 feet. I started hiking a little north of the parking area to a ridge. My plan was to bushwhack straight up. It was a leg-burning experience, but not too hard. The ridge I followed was great. It's the entrance to the Pecos Wilderness. It led straight to the peak. At about 11,200 feet in elevation, I came to the land of fallen trees. The climbing over trees did not last too long, and overall it was a nice hike. I arrived at the peak at 9:15, 2.5 hours straight hiking. The distance was 2.2 miles. I looked at the next peak and thought it was too far for today, but decided to do it anyway. I could see the afternoon storm clouds forming, so I decided to jog down to the bottom of the ridge to speed things up. I knew that the lightning storms were coming. I jogged a little over a mile, then started hiking again. It's a beautiful ridge to hike. At times I had to cross jagged rocky edges, but nothing too dangerous. Shortly before the peak, I saw 3 or 4 rams with their majestic curling horns. At about 11, the storm clouds were moving in. I could hear the rumble of thunder. I said a prayer for a clear peak, and amazingly, the little area of the ridge and the peak cleared out and became sunny. I arrived at the peak at 11:30, 4 hours and 45 minutes nonstop. I had traveled 5 miles. I made a couple of victory phone calls. On top of mountain peaks, phones work fairly well. I took some pictures and headed down. Amazingly, again, the left side of the ridge was all storm clouds, while the ridge I was hiking back on was clear. It was almost like a wall. I went down enough to be safe from the lightning and had a 15-minute lunch. Enough jerky. This time I brought smoked oysters and crackers. I poured the oil over the dog food, and we both had a great lunch. It was funny. A few times I would be hiking and no dog. Daisy's backpack would get caught in a branch, and she would be barking or making sounds for me not to leave her. It began to rain, and rain lightly for the next 3 hours. The dog would bark, protecting us from the thunder. My original plan was to hike back the way I came, but I really didn't want to hike Trampas Peak a second time, so I planned to go back to the ridge and bushwhack it down to the Trampas Trail. I would not recommend this, at least the way I went. I went to the far end of the South Ridge where it was starting to go back up to Trampas Peak, and I headed straight down from there west towards the Trampas Trail. It was okay at first, but it became a very narrow, steep canyon with a little stream in the center. I followed it down. It was a 2-hour obstacle course fight. This was the hardest downhill stretch that I have ever done. thousands of fallen, wet, slick trees in a narrow canyon that made a steep V that I could hardly stand up on. My motto was just keep going. I can't live here. At times I would look and there was nowhere to go, so I fell back on my motto and belly rolled a few logs with the dog. Don't go this way. Maybe if I had cut down the ridge in the middle away from this obstacle course stream. I was tired of all this and was hurrying too much. With the wet, slick logs, this could have been dangerous. I looked back and no dog. I thought, oh no, I've got to go back up. I fought back up to the dog. She was not stuck, but had had enough. I had enough too. We could have just stopped there and stayed for good. I took her pack and put it in mine. I viewed it as a sign and for safety decided to slow way down. At last we reached the trail. I could have kissed it. This was the same trail I hiked about 2 weeks ago. I had about 2.5 miles to go, but it felt like I was floating out compared to what we had just done. I arrived back at the car at 4:15, 9.5 hours of almost non-stop hiking. We hiked about 11 miles and had an up-down elevation gain of 4,612 feet. As the exhausted dog curled up in the seat, we headed home.